Could you imagine rocking up to a date and someone smells? Surely anyone would be put off by that.
At least a bit of perfume. I would say the first biggest red flag, Tan, is if you're on a date and the person you're on a date with is rude to the waiter.
100% agree.
That is such a big red flag.
This brings me back to, if you watched episode 1 and I talked about my personal biggest put off in someone, it's arrogance. Because by you being rude, you are belittling that person. There's always someone better and worse. There's always someone better than you and someone worse than you. You should never look up or down to someone. And just because you're paying for this service, it doesn't mean that you're entitled to be rude to someone. That's just someone else normal outside of work and day life who's just a normal person to you.
Yeah,
so why,
it's true.
Why number one, think you're better than them, and number two, feel you're entitled to be rude to them?
I 100% agree. I think if someone's rude to the waiter, that shines heavily that they are very arrogant. And that for me would be the last time I ever see that person. So I would probably say for number 2, a big red flag is if you're someone who's fashionably late.
Okay.
Say you're like 5 minutes late to every party and that's kind of your character. We've spoken about being true to yourself, being who you want to be, and don't change who you are when you go on a date. So I would say don't feel too pressured to be 5 minutes late to a date. And that would also give you an opportunity to see their reaction to that. Because if the person you're on a date with, is happy to accept that you're 5 minutes late and not take it to heart, that's one way of showing how his character is. But then let's just say he's bombarding you with messages, he's calling you, he's saying, no, hurry up, la 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 la, showing impatience, showing frustration. And that's your first date and he can't compose himself. That's a big red flag.
See, I would actually argue and disagree with that, because I agree 100% that you should be true to yourself and be who you are on a first date.
Yeah.
However, something as simple as making the effort to be on time as a first impression needs to be made. Should you purposely or maybe not care that you're fashionably late because that's who you normally are? Or should you say, that's who I normally am, but this is a first impression. I want to make a good one. I want to make the extra effort. I'll get there early, prepare myself. But like an interview.
But then this contradicts what we've been saying to a degree then, doesn't it? Because we're saying almost try to be the worst version of yourself. We've said this in a previous episode and we've spoken about being exactly who you are. So if that's who you are, why are you going to now be someone different for a first date?
Here, I guess, is where the misconception is. Because when we say be true to yourself, right?
Yeah.
Say, for example, you go on a date, you might wear your fancy pair of jeans, you might put shoes, you might wear heels, you might put makeup on. But that's not me 100% of the time. So would you say I'm not being true to myself by dressing up and making more effort? Or should I go in my tracksuits, hair tied back, no makeup on because that's who I more am? No, you have to make effort. It's a balance. But being true to yourself is maybe on a date, explain, I am one of those people that are quite late to things. It's being honest, but not showing an action, not purposely being that person because you want to be upfront and open about who you are.
So I suppose if you don't want to turn up fashionably late, like Tanya's mentioned, you made a good point there. Maybe flip it by saying to them, I'm on time today, but I am quite late to every party or to every event. Would that bother you?
Not even that. I guess it's more of a jokeable thing, isn't it? It's a talking point of, I'm so glad I made it on time today because I'm usually one of those people that is always late. It's almost like a comical statement that not only that introduces yourself, it explains who you are, but it creates a fun factor.
That's a really good point. I would say though, for me, if I was definitely on the lady side, if I was a lady and I was going on a date with a man, I would definitely turn up 5 minutes late. Don't wait there with heels, waiting for him to come to you. Do you know what I mean? Like that's what I think.
See, I think that is a sense of entitlement, which you and me disagree with. Why should you think you're better because you're in heels, you're dressed up? No, he has to be there. He has to wait for me. You are equal. Don't overthink. Humble yourself. Get there on time. Make the effort. And hopefully you both do the same thing.
Yeah, okay, interesting.
Now, keeping to the subject of entitlement, and we've touched on this many times before, them expecting you to pay on a first date.
Oh, yeah, this is a good one.
No, big sense of entitlement.
Big red flag. And I just want to elaborate on this because this is a big deal. Because I would say that the expectation and the want are two different things.
Absolutely.
So on a first date, I'd probably want to pay for you. But if you're sitting there expecting me to pay for you, that is a whole different story. That would put me off.
I 100% agree. And, you know, whoever makes the plans should have every intention to want to, not expect, want to pay. And if at that point when the bill comes, you know, someone wants to pay or you fight over it or you split, it's the intention that's key here.
Yeah.
Whatever happens after that,
Agreed.
however agrees or however you do it is different to sitting there, you know, the bill comes and you just sit there and you wait because you're entitled and expect them to pay for you. It's not right. It's not right from the offset. And that is a very big flag for me.
I completely 100% without a shadow of a doubt agree with you there, Tan. But like I said, you know, you shouldn't expect it. If it happens, it's nice, but you should go on a date prepared to pay for the date. Prepared to pay your end at least.
Let's say, for example, you were on a budget and you didn't have much money.
Yeah.
Don't go out to a lavish restaurant and expect not to pay. You need to agree on a suitable date that if you do pay, which you should fully expect to, you can afford it.
Agreed. I totally agree. Now, moving on to the next big red flag is no gratitude. So if you're on a date with someone and you find that the person that you're on a date with has a lot more negative things to say versus positive things, that shows no gratitude in life. And I think that's a big put off because you don't really want to be someone who's a negative, pessimist kind of character.
No, I 100% agree. And gratitude and manifestation are two things that I believe with my whole heart. And to be grateful for things in life, you really do appreciate and value everything. And that shines through and shows, like you said, the positivity and that clear and good, honest mindset that you've got. There's no point sitting there bringing yourself down and someone else down. Talk about the highlights, talk about your achievements, learn their achievements and be grateful for who you are and present yourself, you know, be proud of that.
100%, Tan. I would say gratitude is a big thing because if you're with someone who's not grateful, be prepared to spend the rest of your life listening to things that they have to complain about.
No one wants a neggy, especially on a first date when you are literally selling yourselves. So,
it's so
that's
true.
a big no because
100%.
you want someone to bring you up, not put you down. So bye neggy.
See you later, Neggy.
No to the neggy.
I love the abbreviation Neggy. That is so funny. The next biggest red flag, and I would say that this is one that is for me probably one of the biggest. I'd say this is top 3, which is if someone's always on their phone whilst on a date or always looking at the time, checking their phone, checking their watch. That for me is firstly very frustrating because it almost gives an indication that they want to get the hell out of there. But also, they're with you for what, 1, 2, 3 hours and they can't keep their phone away from them. It shows that there's another priority above you, which I think is quite a put off, especially on the first date.
Yeah, it's such a simple thing to do, but just invest time in them. Because if you're choosing to sit there on your phone or you show disinterest and you're not focused, what's the point in being there? You've both made the effort to get there. You've both made the effort to spark these conversations and pursue it for whatever reason it may be. So be present in the moment.
I totally agree. So moving on to the next big red flag, when someone doesn't make the effort to look after their personal hygiene on a date. I personally think that you don't have to wear a suit and a tie, but it's so important to look after yourself. Can you imagine going on a date and you haven't even had a shower, done your hair, brush your teeth? Like, these are the bare minimum essentials, like dirty hands. I'd say just make the effort to look presentable on a first date.
This is probably one of the simplest, biggest no-nos.
It doesn't
right?
need to be said.
Exactly that. It does not even need to be said. But surely you would know and you should be presentable on a first date. I.e., you should have that shower, wash your hair, brush your hair, you know, make an effort. Could you imagine rocking up to a date and someone smells? I mean, surely anyone would be put off by that.
At least a bit of perfume or aftershave.
Exactly. At least a little check under the arm or anything.
Check under the arm.
It's just simple stuff. Go to the toilet, check yourself over and be ready.
It's the little things, right? If they don't smell nice, let's be honest, a nice fragrance on a woman or a man is quite attractive.
Absolutely.
So
we all saw that Lynx Chocolate Man advert.
Did you? What were you talking about?
This was years and years ago. I remember studying it.
You studied it? Oh my God.
We studied it in media. We talked about the effects of advertising. And this Lynx chocolate scent, it sprayed it on a man and then he became this walking chocolate. He was irresistible. But going back to it, it's sparking a sense of, interest. It's that smell, you're drawn to
Yeah.
it. It's sparking a sense.
Yeah, I never knew about that.
I have to show you it.
You have to show me it.
Let us know if you've seen that advert. It's brilliant.
So this brings us on to the next point now. It's a big red flag if you're on a date and they're not asking you genuine questions and showing genuine curiosity.
Yeah, 100%. I think a date is all about making effort, right? And if they don't care to even do the simplest response, which is you, just to ask and find out from you who you are, then what's the point of the date? Because if they don't care to know who you are, there's no purpose to it. The whole point of a date is to understand and learn from each other and see if it's worth anything beyond that. If it's just a conversation of you listening to them and them not showing any interest back, it's not a two-way street. Without that balancing conversation, the only thing it will lead to is awkward silence. And no one wants awkward silence on a first date. I think that is a really big red flag. If you spent half the time on your date just sat there looking into an abyss, not knowing what to say because no one cared to ask, that's a big no.
I totally agree. For someone to have a bit about themselves on a first date and to show a nice bit of character and show genuine interest, there needs to be a back and forth flow of questions and answers. There needs to be genuine curiosity. And for me, I would say that if someone's not asking you genuine questions on the first date, and like you said, Tanya, earlier, you touched up on a good point. If the questions are not open-ended and they're just asking you yes or no sort of questions, then I'd say, again, that shows their intellect as well. So definitely, if they're not asking you questions, they're not showing interest, or they're not showing that they are genuinely interested or curious in your life, then I'd say that's a red flag, a big one. So this brings us on to the next big red flag, jealousy and being possessive. Obviously, if someone is very jealous of you on the first date, I think that's a very, very big red horrible flag that is a sign to run. Let's say, for example, you're on a date and then a guy checks you out, and then the guy that you're with suddenly gets angry and he's like, oh, why is he checking you out, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, you're an attractive woman, you're on a date. If you're attractive, someone's going to want to look at you, right? I would say jealousy is a horrible sign, and jealousy tends to lead to someone being controlling and possessive, which again are two huge red flags. So we're actually covering 2 in 1 now of red flags. So I definitely say the controlling, possessiveness and jealousy are 3 parts of the same thing that are big red flags.
Yeah, no, and I agree. And I think it can be so easy to establish that from the set, right?
Definitely.
Like you said, if anyone, for example, says something, or, let's say you're talking about your past experiences and they suddenly get a bit obnoxious about it or a bit angry or unsettled about your past. Why should that bother them? That shouldn't affect someone, especially at the very start when you don't even really know them. So something as simple as just assessing how they react with those situations or those conversations can from the offset establish if they're a controlling or possessive person or they're not.
I totally agree. So if you're ever on a date with someone and a guy or man or woman looks at you, or you get some form of attention and there's signs of jealousy, definitely run. That is a big red flag. That characteristic trait can then lead to someone being controlling, quite possessive, and then before you know it, they can be almost like making you feel bad if you want to have a social life, and it's not good. So definitely, I think that's a good eye opener.
Yeah, exactly. And like we said, it's not assuming that on your date someone's going to look at you and that's the only way you're going to test, because the chances are that's probably not going to happen. But we touched on it. Anything that's related to history, past experiences, and they have a reason to be annoyed is a big no-no. So the last red flag that I would probably have to say is if your date has an attraction to someone else at that time. For example, and we've touched on this before, you're not blind on a date or in a relationship, but if quite obviously you're talking to your date and their head literally swerves at the pretty waitress that just walks past and they lose focus in what you're just talking about, that's a big put off. They've just lost focus so instantly. And in that one short space of time, they should really be fully devoted to the person they're getting to know.
You raised a really good point there, because especially the first date, their focus should really be mainly on you. And if they can't even hold a 2-hour date with you for 1 to 2 hours and just have their focus solely on you, then that raises an alarm. And also that is probably a sign that they're not seeing you as a long-term prospect and more of a short-term prospect. So definitely that's a good red flag, and that's definitely something to be attentive to.
It's about being respectful, right? If someone's talking to you and you lose focus, your head goes somewhere else. But not only that, but they're focusing on someone else, that belittles what you have to say and who you are. What's the point in wasting your time with someone like that? That would be an instant put off for me. I'd be like, well, for those 2 hours, like you said, for those 2 hours, if you can't invest your time and focus into me, then I'm not going to carry on with you.
No, I think you made some really good points. So that's the end. Thank you so much for watching. We really do hope that you found value in it. If you did, give us a thumbs up and let us know down below in the comments what resonated with you the most.